A college that made students confess to all being racist, a trans friend who wants to punch someone, and a pharmacist who wishes death on Trump supporters. We're going to get into your crazy woke horror stories and experiences and life situations where you asked for my advice and so much more in today's episode of the Barad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our media, and our politics, all from an independent perspective. Guys, I asked you all to send in voice notes with your crazy personal experiences, and you did not disappoint. You spilled the tea. You sent in so many amazing voice notes. I haven't been able to go through them all yet. I'm still working through them, but I picked out some really interesting ones to go through with you today. Up first, this is quite the interesting experience that one person had on a college campus. Take a listen.
Hey Brad, my name is Maddie, and I just wanted to tell you about one of my classes that I have in college. So it's this class about environmental policy, because I'm an environmental science major. And at first, we were learning about like historical environmental policy for protecting wildlife, all that. But then it turned into this environmental justice and woke stuff, and it lasted for about 6 weeks, where we just would talk about racism. And we sat in a circle, all 30 of us, with the Campus Diversity Center, and there was this huge poster that said, "You are racist." And we all had to just like confess, like, this is the first time I learned about racism and blah, blah, blah. And it was a huge waste of time. And I just thought you would find that a little funny, a little sad, but that's the state of campuses, I guess. Otherwise, my school's amazing. It's just, the woke stuff kind of infiltrates academia. Anyway, thank you for listening.
So thank you for the note, and I absolutely do find it a little bit funny, a little bit sad, but not even a little bit surprising, because like you mentioned, this is absolutely par for the course for academia these days, for at least undergraduate education, rather. My own college experience at UMass was never quite that bad or that blatant, but that kind of woke stuff was all around us constantly. Introduce your name and your pronouns in the little discussion section, microaggressions, trigger warnings, all that stuff that's just so tired, so condescending, so fundamentally regressive and infantilizing to different minority groups. And it's interesting to me because I also I took an environmental economics class as part of my economics major. And it was interesting to me because the concept of like racism baked into environmental policy is not an illegitimate one in and of itself, because in a historical context, things like, all right, well, where are we going to put the heavily polluting power plant? Well, we're going to put it in the low-income Black neighborhood. And so then when you're looking at the long-term economic consequences from the cancer caused by that pollution, there's a racial element to it if those decisions were made during like the civil rights era or pre-civil rights era. So race is not an illegitimate topic whatsoever when it comes to like environmentalism and other things, but they definitely go way overboard with it. And the idea that you talked about racism for 6 weeks in an environmentalism class, an environmental policy class, is wild. And then this thing that they made you confess to being racist is really messed up. I mean, if they wanted to have an open, a candid conversation about race, about bias, maybe there's a way to do that that's not absolutely terrible, but this actually sounds incredibly unpleasant. And I mean, what would happen if you said, no, I'm not really racist. I try pretty hard to just treat everyone the same and try to treat everyone the same regardless of their color. They probably would have said that's racist because being colorblind is racist now. But look, this is why a lot of this DEI stuff on college campuses has gone too far and needs to be pared back, because we should have college campuses that are welcoming and open to people of all races and all backgrounds, but we don't need to put identity at the forefront of everything, obsess over it constantly, and force these kinds of bizarre struggle sessions on students. So I'm glad you made it through it without losing too many brain cells. And you know what? Keep spilling the tea, guys. I love hearing about this stuff. As much as it makes me roll my eyes, it brings me back to my glory days. Up next, we've got a message from somebody whose trans friend threatened them with violence after this. The trans debate is getting insane.
My pronouns aren't preferred, they are mandatory.
The only way to figure out what's actually going on is with Ground News, an amazing service that I've used for years and used to prepare this show. Ground News gathers news from all across the world in one place so you can see what both sides are saying and make up your own mind. It also shows you everything you need to know about a source's ownership, bias, and factuality. Take the recent UK Supreme Court decision, for example. Using Ground News, you can see how outlets on the left are spinning it. The Independent wrote, "Supreme Court ruling, just the latest curb on trans rights worldwide." Plus, you can see how right-wing media is covering the story. The Daily Wire wrote, "UK Supreme Court rules trans-identifying men are not women." That's quite the difference. Using Ground News, you can get a neutral summary of every story, see how both sides are framing it, see who's covering the story at all and who isn't, and most importantly, use your critical thinking skills to make up your mind for yourself. You can get the same plan that I use, which is the Vantage subscription, if you sign up through my link, ground.news/Brad, or scan the QR code on screen. Get 40% off unlimited access, which comes out to about $5 a month. This exclusive discount is available now through this link, so act now to break your media bubble and keep your critical thinking skills sharp. Okay, up next, I don't know about y'all, but I personally have never threatened to punch a friend if they had a different opinion than me, but that's just me, and that wasn't the experience that one person had with their trans friend recently. Take a listen.
Hey Brad, my name is Grace, and first off, I just want to say I love watching your show. I enjoy talking to my friends about it. But on that note, I recently have a friend who came out as trans, male to female, and it feels like all her political views just flip-flopped. But the most interesting thing happened when I was talking to her yesterday about your videos, and I was like, yeah, I really agree with a lot of the points he says, especially about trans issues, biological men should not compete in women's sports, and I don't think minors should be allowed to transition with altering their bodies and stuff. But my friend didn't really hear the second part, and she was like, well, I'm glad you said you agreed with some of the stuff, because if you said you didn't agree with minors transitioning, I might have hit you in the face. And I just blinked, and I was kind of stunned, and I was like, oh? And she was like, yeah, I would have genuinely hit you. And I was like, that's not okay, because that's kind of insane. And I didn't say anything to her after that, but I just thought that was kind of crazy. And let me know your opinion on that, because that has never happened to me before. And I thought it was kind of funny and mildly concerning. But yeah, love your videos, Brad.
Well, thank you so much for watching, and sorry you had this experience. All I could say is, it's not giving ladylike. It's your trans male to female friend is very much exuding male energy, and not the good kind, okay? But the kind that thinks women with the wrong opinion should be punched. No, that is not giving ma'am, first of all. That's giving sir.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
And it's giving sir in the kind of, the prison cell is this way, sir. First door down on the left. This is your new home. You should not be threatening women. I don't care if you're trans, if you're not trans, if you're male, if you're female. It's not okay to threaten people with violence for having a different opinion than you, especially women when you're a male and you have a bigger, frame and stronger muscles and there's that physical power imbalance. But just in general, it's not okay to do that. And especially not to a friend. This is not how friends treat friends. So I think you should cut this person off, not because they're transgender, not because they have different political views than you, but because they threatened you with violence. And it doesn't sound like it was even a joke. Even a joke would be like, oh, I don't know. But then when they double down on it and say, I genuinely would have punched you for having this opinion that, by the way, 60+% of America agrees with, that kids probably shouldn't be subjected to irreversible lifelong medical treatments and transitions that can leave them sterile or lacking sexual function as adults. Wait till you're 18 or above. That's not a hot take. Not in 2025. Most people agree with that. And it's not a position that's inherently hateful or bigoted. But you know what? Even if it was, it's still not okay to punch people for saying something that hurts your fifis. Frankly, this friend, it is honestly good for you that you've even stuck with this friend through their transition, through their political evolution. No more, babe. You got to draw a line in the sand, cut this person off, because they sound scary and not like a good friend at all. Thank you so much for the message and for being a loyal viewer, and hopefully you can make some friends that won't threaten you with violence for being correct and having great taste in YouTubers. Guys, if you're enjoying this episode, remember you can send in voice notes with your woke horror stories or your personal life situations at the link in the description, and please do consider subscribing, hitting that like button, yada yada yada. Y'all know the drill. And don't forget to check out the merch for the Brad vs. Everyone merch line. Get your Delulu is showing mugs, sweatshirts, everything else. My boyfriend worked really hard on it, so the more love you show that, the more he'll be happy. Okay, up next, we gotta check in with another Delulu medical professional. Something of a trend is emerging from these call-ins because this person works with a pharmacist who wishes death openly on Trump supporters. Let's take a listen.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I live in New Jersey, and I am a white woman. I try not to watch the news because I can't change anything that's happening, and it just drives me to an anxious mess. But at work,
Fair.
I work in a pharmacy. The lead pharmacist is so woke left. He wants all the Trumpers to be murdered. He
Oh?
wants, he believes that The Handmaid's Tale is happening, Project 2025, all this shit, and he's constantly making fun of customers. Like, God forbid someone wears a MAGA hat, he just wishes death upon them. I can't speak to my opinions because I am more of a center right. I just kind of either ignore it or agree, and I feel like it doesn't serve me to speak my opinions because I feel like the tides would turn and I would be treated like the other. And I don't want that, especially since I um, cannot handle conflict. Uh, but thanks for listening. Have a good day.
Well, thank you for letting us know about this because this is very disturbing. Unfortunately, we've talked about on this show, this kind of violent sentiment is on the rise among some people, not all, but some people on the left. But it is not okay, especially not from a medical professional in a professional setting. This is not just, oh, my coworker's insufferably woke and like talks about microaggressions or the kind of thing that you can just like roll your eyes at and ignore. This is serious. This is a real problem because as a pharmacist, you literally have other people's lives in your hands, right? If you make the medication wrong, you put the wrong dose, you put the wrong pills in the wrong bottle, make any sort of mistake, someone could lose their life from that. That does happen. And it is a very serious occupation. And I do know that it's a very stressful occupation. So I understand that pharmacists are put under a lot of stress, work crazy hours, but nothing justifies this. It's not okay to mock your customers, who in this case are basically your patients. You need to show them compassion and you need to want what's best for them. And you can have whatever personal political views you want. It's not the problem is not that this pharmacist thinks, oh, Project 2025, oh, Handmaid's Tale. Like, that's in the category of, okay, normal person has political opinions, whatever. Maybe they should keep them out of the workplace. But that's not what I think is the massive red flag here. It is the mocking customers and the wishing death on customers that have MAGA hats or what have you. You need to report this to your employer. You also need to report this to the state licensing board or whatever sort of professional organization there is. You have to do a little bit of research about this for pharmacists in your state. That's not okay. This isn't the kind of thing you can just look the other way on. You need to speak up. You don't have to challenge this person directly if they could hurt your career or what have you, but you need to inform your bosses or higher level management in some way, and you need to report this person to the professional organization for pharmacists in your area because what you've described is totally out of keeping with basic professional ethics for a pharmacist and can't be tolerated. You can't have people acting like this and getting away with it in such important medical positions. Up next, we've got an interesting call from somebody whose sister identifies as non-binary and isn't sure how to explain that to their kid. Let's take a listen.
Hi, Brad. My name's Kels, And I am currently 8.5 months pregnant with our first child, a little boy. And I have some family members that are little leftist extremes, is putting it nicely. And, my husband and I, we're pretty moderate, leaning towards conservative. And we want to instill traditional masculinity ideals within our son and teach him how to be just a good man, a supportive man. But the problem is, one of my sisters, I have two sisters, one of them has been identifying as a they, them for about, I want to say 2.5, 3 years now. And I don't know.
Bruh.
I'm not gonna call my sister anything but aunt to my son. So I'm wondering, how can I go about talking to her about this, or even bringing it up if it does happen to be brought up, without completely destroying her, because she's a good person. It's just, it's a little messy. I'd appreciate any ideas you have. Thank you.
Thank you for the note, and it absolutely does sound messy because you love your sister. She sounds like a good person. You say she's a good person, and just because somebody has like this delulu idea about their gender being non-binary or whatever, doesn't mean they're terrible. Like I'm sure she has lots of redeeming qualities. Maybe she's a lovely person in many ways. The thing is, though, you've got to balance two values here. On one hand, it is your responsibility to teach your child truth about the world, and no human being is non-binary. Basically everyone can be categorized as either male or female, and there's this like tiny statistical exception of people who are genuinely intersex, but that isn't what we're talking about here. And you don't want to teach your child these regressive sex stereotypes. Well, auntie Rachel isn't actually your auntie because she isn't very feminine. She doesn't like to wear makeup or dress. Then you would actually be teaching your kids sexism, because the truth is that your sister is a female, and so this is your son's aunt. And it's okay if she's not traditionally feminine, if she's like more masculine or butch or likes to dress androgynously or whatever the personality quirks are. We should be teaching kids that that's okay, that sex is binary, but personality and expressing yourself is a wide spectrum, and there's no reason to bully or shame people for expressing themselves differently. But you should not be teaching your kid untrue things, like the idea that somebody is a they, them because of how they feel inside. So I would stand firm on that. But there's probably a way to do it that isn't going to inflame and cause a problem with your sister. So, for example, maybe teach your kid to just avoid saying the pronouns in front of your sister. So, for example, like you still refer to her as your aunt and she and her in your household when she's not around, but when she's there, you just speak to her and just try to avoid the pronouns. So you're not teaching your kid this, you're not pushing untrue belief systems that you don't endorse or subscribe to, but you're also not like aggressively rubbing your sister's nose in it and causing a problem. And if she can't accept that kind of coexistence of different views, then that's on her. But you will at least know that you're doing what's right for your child while not being needlessly antagonistic to your sister. Because if your sister truly feels strongly about this, for you to be purposefully or intentionally in front of her teaching your kid, that's your aunt, she, would come across, I think, as hostile, as aggressive, as invalidating. And even though it's not in fact valid, still for peace's sake and just for the sake of coexisting and getting along and modeling how to disagree and coexist for your son, that's probably the best way to do it. If your sister really insists, like, no, you must teach your child this, you must tell your son to call me, I don't know, some gender neutral fake thing, then you have to sit her down and you have to be honest with her and tell her everything. And just try to say, listen, I love you. I want you in my son's life. I think you're a great person in this way or that way, but I don't agree with you on this fundamentally, and we have to agree to disagree. And if she can't accept that, again, at the end of the day, that's on her. Doesn't mean it won't be hard, doesn't mean it's not a loss, it's not tragic, but you do have to stand up for truth at the end of the day, and you can't be teaching your child woke nonsense and pseudoscience just to placate a relative. At least that's my take. I'm not a parent, so far at least, I don't have to deal with these situations. If you have other advice for this woman who called in, Do let me know in the comments. Up next, we've got a voicemail from somebody who is getting attacked and bullied just for attending a speech at their university. Let's take a listen.
Hi, Brad. I'm not going to state my name just for privacy reasons, but I wanted to let you know that I'm a longtime viewer of the show. I absolutely love you. I think that you're incredibly nuanced and also super hilarious. But I just wanted to share a recent experience that I have. So I attend Portland State University, which is rather liberal university in a pretty liberal city and state. And yesterday, the conservative figure Riley Gaines visited the school. And I actually do consider myself pretty liberal. I think I'm more center than a lot of the left nowadays. But I went to go see her speak just because I was interested in hearing what she had to say. I always go and visit whatever speakers they have. And there was a huge protest outside of the building that involved arrests and a bunch of other just crazy stuff. And I shared to a few classmates that I had went to go see her, and now I'm being called a bigot, I'm being called transphobic, I'm being called a terrible person, and I don't know, I'm feeling kind of stuck about what I should do, because even though I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that she said, I still thought that she was a good speaker, and it was, nice to hear from a different viewpoint. And I just think that it's ridiculous that I'm being stigmatized in this way for something that I don't even 100% agree with. And I was just curious if you had heard about the situation.
Well, thank you for your no. And no, I hadn't heard about the situation at Portland State, but I have seen other incidents involving Riley in the past where she's spoken at college campuses and people have freaked the heck out and in really deranged ways, including like trapping her in buildings and all sorts of illegal stuff. For context, guys, Riley Gaines was a teammate of Leah Thomas, the infamous trans woman swimmer who is biologically male, who destroyed the competition in collegiate swimming, and also made Riley and others uncomfortable by displaying Leah's genitalia, male genitalia, in locker rooms and other stuff. So Riley has kind of built up this career for herself now as this activist, influencer, commentator, and she's controversial. I don't agree with her on everything. I mean, I agree with her on the trans sports issue, but regardless, you did nothing wrong. You literally did the thing you're supposed to do as a college student, which is engage in intellectual debates, discover different perspectives, listen to the voices that are brought into campus. That is literally the point of a college. And just because you went to hear someone speak doesn't mean you agree with them, doesn't mean you endorse everything they said. And the classmates or the people around campus that are throwing that at you just because you went to go listen to this woman speak, at some point you got to tell them just to off. These are unreasonable people with incredibly closed minds. And if they actually think listening to someone or attending a prominent event when a speaker comes to campus means you endorse them, they're delulu and they can't be reached at right now, at least. Maybe they'll come to their senses when that first tax bill hits or one of the other, reality checkpoints that young adults experience that sometimes brings them back from this delulu mind virus. But it is not on you to convince them that you're not this terrible thing that they're accusing you of for no reason. You did nothing wrong. Let them say whatever they want about you. It doesn't mean that much anymore. And I know you're on a campus that's very left-wing dominated, but if you're not in that cult, the friends that you're going to make are going to be the people who maybe they're not right-wing, maybe they're not conservative, but they're not closed-minded like that. They're not those kinds of types. So let them say whatever they want. Let them yap. Let their noise run. And just keep it moving. Find other people who are actually interested in ideas and conversations and not safe spaces and not just calling everyone a bigot, because those people who do that are boring anyway. They're not fun to hang out with. They're not fun to talk to. So I'm really sorry that happened to you. I think that's totally ridiculous and unacceptable and just kind of a sad microcosm of where we're at with college campuses these days. But in some way, and maybe it's a small blessing, these people are letting you know that they're not worth investing time in and building relationships with. They're going to be this close-minded and this obnoxious. You did not do anything wrong. We need more students on college campuses today to take the approach that you're taking here. So more power to you. as far as I'm concerned. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go. Comment with your thoughts and let me know which one of these was the craziest to you. If you have any advice or disagree with anything I said. And guys, remember, you can send me a message at the link in the description. You can also check out the merch line. And thank you again to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. And with that, we'll talk again real soon.